Hello everybody. So in this video I want to talk about a few changes I did on this Mercury 115 inline 6 motor. So one of the major changes I did is some of the ways the engine hooks up on the electrical side. So what I did, the first thing, I added a bus bar right here. It's basically on this empty spot of aluminum plate where the switch boxes are mounted. And the reason why I did this, I'm using a controller that was not made for this motor, so of course the plugs wouldn't fit. Besides that, I didn't even have them. So instead of chasing plugs down, I just simply added this bus bar and connected the motor to the controller box via this bus bar. I think the advantage is if there's something going wrong, I have to do some electrical testing, I can tap real quick into those connectors. I can see if there's any damages on the cable and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's that basically. And all the rest is just like the motor usually is. So the second change I did, the cold start on those newer 115s, I don't know when they changed it, but instead of doing the original choke plates, which they had put only on the top and the middle carburetor for the cold start, they added they got away with this and did a fuel enricher valve, which basically what it did, it was connected to the upper carburetor float bowl, and at startup, I guess it would just basically inject fuel or let fuel go right into the crankcase, and I wasn't sure if I would like that. For the fact is it adds a bunch of fuel hoses, and from my past experience, they all start leaking after a while, and it can cause a bunch of problems. And I had those type of motors in the past with the old choke plates, and they seem to be working just fine. I mean, I didn't see any problem with them in the first place. So I went back and got rid of this fuel enricher and mounted from an older motor I had laying around those choke plates. Let me see if I can zoom in with this camera. Okay, I hope this it shows it pretty well. I zoomed in on the top carburetors, where those are they're just basically just plastic flaps. They get activated by a solenoid that sits on top of the motor. And to make it even more simple, instead of having an extra switch or choke pull or something like that, I simply connected it to the starter solenoid. So every time I turn the key to start the motor up, it automatically activates them. It doesn't really matter if of course, you know, you wouldn't need it if the engine is warm, but it's not going to hurt either. So in that case, I don't have to worry about it. It's always going to be by default. It'll choke it for a few seconds, and like I just said, it only stays on as long as I crank on the startup. So let's see if the camera shows how it works. Well, my battery's pretty shot, that's why the starter turns so slow, but it's not my problem right now. Still in the experimental phase. I got another battery I'm probably gonna put in tomorrow. Yeah, I just wanted to show how I did this. Yeah, for me it works. I don't know how good it would work in colder climates, but I think the whole idea of those little choke plates is so once the starter starts turning and you choke at least 2 of the carburetors, it sucks just more fuel into the motor. It's the same principle as those fuel in the little fuel enricher. Yeah, that's what I choose to do. Another modification I did on my lower engine cowl, there's this aluminum plate I riveted on, and the reason why I did this, I basically cut the lower engine cowl in half. So I found it easier if I have to work on the power head, do anything, to completely remove the lower engine cowl. Same as when you want to access the lower spark plug. You have to get, yeah, it's kind of a little bit of fumbling. But that lower engine cowl you couldn't remove without taking the power head off first. So I decided I'm just gonna cut this thing in half. So if I go now and remove 3 of those rivets, I can pull this part of the engine cowl off. Of course I have to take the bolts out first. I can pull this off. If I want to work, let's say for instance on the lower spark plug, or do anything in this area here. Or I can even take the front part off. Of course I will have to unhook the electrical parts, which is not a big deal really. But in that case, we have full access to the power head without all this shit in the way. You can technically run the motor without it, but it wouldn't be advisable because all the water may splash into the carburetors. But anyways, I did this so I have easy access to work on the motor without, well, you can drop this a little bit down, but still does not allow a lot of access. It may not look the best, but after I'm gonna paint it and sand this off here a little bit, it may not be as noticeable. But I don't want to really I'm not trying to win a beauty contest with this thing. I try to make it as maintenance friendly as I possibly can. Yeah, that part always bothered me, that the engine cowl, the lower part, you couldn't just remove without, taking the power head off. So that's just what I did, and of course it looks the same way on the other side, needless to say. I could, instead of the rivets, I could use, at least on one end, I could use maybe some self-tapping screws or nuts or bolts. But I'm not planning on taking it apart very often. And if I have to, just roll the rivets out and put new ones in. That's not a big deal. So, yeah, that's another modification I did, just to basically make my life easier. I thought I'd share it. Okay, that's that part. So this is the fuel enricher valve, which is usually mounted here. And then it gets fed by the upper carburetor bowl. And it's electrically connected, of course, to the cold start mechanism. And what it would do, it would simply open under cold start conditions. The solenoid would open this valve and would let extra fuel go from from one of the ports into the second one, and it would be connected to the intake manifold. My thought on this was, what if this thing fails and gets stuck open? So that means fuel would continuously fill into the intake manifold. Maybe not a lot, but just enough to make the engine run way too rich and of course piss a bunch of fuel away. And there's really no way to check it unless you really actually disconnect the hose and every so often check out if this thing still works and doesn't just bypass. So I decided I get rid of it. I'm not going to put it on because those mechanical choke plates, well, by default they're going to be, as soon as they get de-energized, there's a spring that pulls them back anyways. And well, it's very visible. You can see that whether they're open or not, or closed or not. Okay, that's that. And there's another thing I removed from the engine. Let's see if the camera's gonna focus. This is this little gizmo here. It's the idle stabilizer module. It is mounted, I think somewhere around in here, and then connected to the switch boxes. I have no idea how it operates. I don't know how it stabilizes the idle. Since it's an electric part, I would assume it does something to the ignition timing. And the reason why I removed it because I found information that many people commented on in saying this thing will destroy your motor. I found one very interesting fact where one person, and he seemed to be very knowledgeable about it, and he would say this thing will destroy pistons. It's strangely, when I got this motor that actually looked inside her like it didn't have many hours on there, but one piston was bad, and this thing was still on that motor. At the time I didn't even know. I was just wondering why was one piston destroyed. I mean, it looked like the piston hung up. Didn't damage the cylinder walls, lucky for me. Whereas the 5 other pistons and cylinder walls, they looked like almost in new condition, like this nothing ever happened. And so it was interesting to me that this one person left a comment in one of those forums about those engines that this unit will destroy pistons. So here we go. I leave it off. Don't go in the engine. 2-stroke engines don't idle all that great in the first place. To be honest, I don't give a shit. I'm not gonna plan on idling this thing around for a long time. It makes no sense. So besides all that, I did the usual things. Rebuilt the fuel pump, so that works great. Put a new fuel filter on there. I'm gonna add on additional filter water separator. That's just pretty much a no-brainer. And should be pretty much done. Still haven't checked the ignition timing yet. I'm still learning about it. The last time I water tested the boat, it seemed like it had sufficient enough power. The only hindrance on achieving the speed I was hoping for is this 17-pitch propeller, which is like completely underpitched for the size of this boat, and the power of the engine. It would be probably great for a boat twice the size, and which is probably where it came off at one point in time. So I'm still chasing down propellers. So I can't afford a new one, so a used one has to do. Yeah, I think I'm gonna just upload this video. It's just gonna be step by step, and as I keep working on it and making more progress, and hopefully soon the next water test, I'll keep uploading more, and hopefully I can help somebody else with the same motor, or maybe inspire somebody. I just want to close this video by saying I absolutely love those old Mercury inline sixes. From my knowledge, those are the only ones I ever built or tackled an inline six design. And I think those motors are just absolutely great running. They run very smooth because of the straight crankshaft. And I believe if everything is okay and there's nothing goes wrong, they should be very reliable too. So, well, we'll see to that. Hopefully I get some years of use out of it. Thank you for watching.